Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah Ruth Savita, also known as the Woman in Wool, and on this channel we crochet and talk mostly Irish history, a phrase that I coined to talk about Ireland's history and the countries that are closely associated with Ireland, and their relation to mostly Irish history. Why do we do this? Well, because true crime and makeup are oversaturated. Also, it's what I like. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Hannah Ruth Savita. I moved to Ireland in 2016, and since then I have made it my entire personality. That is correct. Not only that, I have an Etsy shop where you can buy things like this jumper and the project that we'll be working on today. And I also have a dog. And those are all my personality traits. It's time for you to list yours down in the comment section. Cool, thanks. So grab your tea, your coffee. Mine says pick your poison. It's got my lipstick on it, which I think makes it all the more attractive. Also, ignore the curler in the front of my head. It'll be vibey and aesthetic tomorrow. But as for today, we're just enjoying the 40s vibes of pinned up curls and fucking rolling with it, okay? Hi, bud. Also, at the beginning of every video, dog owners, I don't know if this is something that happens to you guys a lot, but at the beginning of every video, I start to talk and my dog is like, oh, what are we doing? You wanna come up? All right, come here. Come on, good boy. There we go. Wanna hang out? Anyway, welcome back to Hannoween, a series that I have made. It's kitschy, it's fun, and it talks about the Irish connection to Halloween. For those of you who don't know, check out my last video, A History of Halloween, and see how it's related to a festival called Samhain that was originated in the ancient Celtic areas of Ireland and other Celtic areas. I know that Scotland and Wales also have traditions around this as well. And Cornwall. I've actually been to Cornwall and they have their own language. They have Cornish and it's a lot like Irish. Anyway, so now as soon as my dog chills out, we can jump into the next topic for today. Last week, I talked about the history of Samhain and Halloween, and today I'm just gonna be doing some light stuff on some ghosties, ghoulies, and girlies that you didn't know were Irish. I'm actually making him another scarf. He has a scarf in this pattern, but he chewed through it. For those of you thinking that terriers are easier, he chews through a lot of things. He's chewed through things I've never thought could be chewed through. Anyway, so in the short form videos that I make for TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube only lets me talk for a minute, so I can't really talk about all of it, and I can't add every single video. But for the videos that I have done on short form, I've been talking about kind of the ghouls, goblins, ghosts. Hello? Oh. I've been talking about the ghouls, goblins, and ghosts that are actually Irish, or come from Irish folklore. Now, full disclosure, I'm not going to be able to talk about everything, and I'm not even going to be able to touch on all of the creatures that I touched on in the short form videos as well. This is just kind of for fun, some bits about some Irish creatures that maybe you didn't think about. For Hannoween. So I know a lot of you probably already know this, but just based on the numbers and the analytics, a lot of you are Irish and are just here to make sure that I don't fuck anything up. Don't worry. This is a safe space for Irish people. You don't have to be afraid here. So, creature number 1. So this one actually always gets my American friends because the Irish people already know this, but the tale of the headless horseman. That actually comes from a creature in Irish folklore. Well, let's get into it. So back when I was knee-high to a something, Disney released a little short called The Headless Horseman. I actually think it was called Ichabod and Mr. Toad, but the story that I'm talking about is just the story of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman. There was also a Johnny Depp movie about this called Sleepy Hollow. A lot of you have probably seen it. Now this one hits a little bit close to home for me, because Sleepy Hollow, because this story, a story written by Washington Irving in 1820, takes place in a small suburb above New York City called Sleepy Hollow. And Sleepy Hollow is in the county, Westchester County, which is where I'm from. And I actually used to work at a bakery in a little town called Irvington, which was the next town over to Sleepy Hollow. So I used to pass Sleepy Hollow all the time on my way to work. And they have a big old statue of the Headless Horseman in their town square. It's pretty cool. And actually Irvington, the town where I work, is named after Washington Irving. So this story kind of resonates for me because it takes place in a place where I'm from and originates for the place where I am. So it's kind of nice. Anyway, this takes place in a town called Sleepy Hollow and follows a nerdy, skinny little English teacher who was originally from New York City. Just my type, baby. He's charming, he's funny, and he's actually kind of manipulative, charming the local women to defeating him for free. His name was Ichabod Crane. That is until he meets the prettiest woman in town, Katrina von Tassel. And he quickly sets his sights to Katrina because she's the most eligible, most beautiful, and richest girl in town. So yeah, I'd be on her ass too. I'd be like, oh my god, Katrina. Hurricane Katrina. I don't think that pickup line would have worked on her though. But there was one problem standing in the way, and that was her current boyfriend, Brom Bones. He's big, he's strong, he's got a real thick neck, and he's not that bright. We all know Brom Bones, don't we? Nowadays, he'd be the kind of guy that knows every single difference between every single protein powder and wears the skinniest jeans you've ever seen. While Ichabod Crane would be played by a Sprouse brother. And honestly, both of these men kind of suck. Katrina really needs to find like a nice dude. Or me, Katrina. Brom sees Ichabod encroaching on his girl and doesn't like it. So at the local Halloween party, he decides to freak Ichabod out with a ghost story, because he knows that Ichabod is terrified of ghosts. So he regales him with the local legend of the Headless Horseman, the tale of a Hessian soldier who got decapitated during battle. This is during the Revolutionary War of America. The horseman carries a pumpkin jack-o'-lantern for a head and rides around town looking for a brand new head. Ichabod gets spooked and decides to leave. He is then met by the Headless Horseman riding on a big black horse, and he is never seen again. Katrina marries Brahms, and they live supposedly happily ever after, but nobody seems to question where that skinny English teacher went, leaving the reader to wonder, is this real? Did the Headless Horseman get Ichabod? Or was there a more sinister plot going on? One to guarantee eliminating all competition for Brom Bones. This was one of America's first ghost stories, but it does have its roots in Celtic folklore. Now, Washington Irving's parents were from Scotland and Cornwall, so they do have Celtic roots. So it might be the case that Washington Irving actually knew this story. And the creature we're talking about in this story is called the Dullahan, and he is arguably so much more terrifying than the Headless Horseman of America. The lore around this creature is that he rides into town at nighttime, and that even locked gates fly open at his arrival. Cool. He then utters a single word. Not from his mouth, I guess, but from his being, maybe? And that's the name of the person he is taking away. The person who supposedly will be replacing his head. And he does have a burning jack-o'-lantern as a head. Again, we talked about this last week, go check out my last video, but the jack-o'-lantern was originally a turnip. He also owns and cracks a whip made out of human spines. Okay, and honestly, name one story that goes harder than human spine whip. Oh wait, and it actually turns out that these stories of the Headless Horseman could have come from an even older tale. An ancient Celtic god called Crom Dubh. I'm reading it here, I didn't want to fuck it up. A god of fertility who demanded human sacrifice in the form of, you guessed it, decapitation. At least that's what I found, and it was an interesting parallel. So there used to be human sacrifices in the name of Crom Dubh, from what I could find. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then when Christianity came to Ireland and these sacrifices pretty much stopped, Crom Dubh took the form of the Headless Horseman in the kind of local folklore. Maybe not canonly, but definitely throughout the Christianization of Ireland, older characters become newer characters. And Crom Dubh very well could have become the Headless Horseman, requiring the human sacrifice through decapitation as he normally did. The more I dive into history, the more it just becomes true crime in the past. So that's the Dullahan, but let's move on to the second creature, which is his horse. You got it. Even his horse is a main character of this story, because why not make it even more terrifying? Children don't need sleep, they need alertness. So there are certain aspects of these legends that say that the Dullahan's horse is actually a puka. Now I know what you're thinking, gesundheit, but puka is just the Irish word for ghost. But it's not necessarily a ghost as we would know it today, like the spirit of a dead person. What's funny is when I pop this online in the short form videos, the amount of people who named their cat Puka, you guys are so cute, I can't even stand it. And actually, a lot of you guys had firsthand experience. Those of you who lived in the countryside said that you'd seen a puka, and honestly, blink twice if you need help from the big smoke. I'll see. Anyway, a puka is a kind of ghost creature type thing that can take on almost any shape. Normally, this shape is a rabbit or a horse. Namely, a horse that will take you away on a joyride and leave you face down in a field the next morning. Other things that do this in Irish folklore would be your mates. The puka can also be like a harbinger of warning, like a rabbit who comes up to you, tells you not to play by the water because there's danger and runs away, only to know that next day there was a flood, or a well-dressed gentleman telling your future and then leaving, which honestly sounds like the world's worst Tinder date. And also, if the Dullahan has one of these as like a pet, don't fuck with the Dullahan, please. Don't talk to him. And actually, there have been a couple of pukas in Hollywood. 1950 film Harvey follows a man who has befriended a huge invisible rabbit, all while his family thinks he's going insane. Understandable. But at the end, they kind of all realize that Harvey the rabbit does exist. Harvey is based on a puka. It got adapted into a play, and I actually got to play one of the characters in Harvey, and I just played some wet blanket named Myrtle. Theater kid. Another puka you might know about in Hollywood is the film Donnie Darko, with Frank, the terrifying rabbit that follows Donnie around. This is a way more sinister take on the puka, and honestly might be a little bit more accurate. The puka forewarns Donnie of certain things, like his house catching on fire, etc. I haven't seen this movie in a long time, so sound off below. Next creature. Now, this next creature was kind of an Irish invention rather than Irish folklore, but it does have its roots in Irish folklore. I am, of course, talking about Dracula. Bram Stoker, Clontarf native, published Dracula in 1897. And it's common knowledge that this character of a foreign blood-sucking seductor is based off of Vlad the Impaler, a Wallachian/Transylvanian prince who used to impale his war victims on spikes outside of his castle. I had to get that one right. So that's inviting. What's interesting about this character outside of the Irish perspective is that it kind of embodies the foreigner. This kind of archaic idea of a foreigner coming in, being seductive and taking over people, and is even a little bit gay, seducing men and women, not really discriminating against gender for the takeover. It kind of plays off this fear of the foreign and the queer. So call me a vampire, baby. Get you a girl that does both, foreign and queer. Well, he didn't like that. But there is an Irish angle to this vampire. Anyway, see, Bram Stoker was actually friends with Oscar Wilde, and Oscar Wilde's mom, Jane Wilde, was an Irish folklore expert and would have known all about Abertha, the chieftain. Abertha was a chieftain warrior that had predilections for the violent. Now, just to clarify, all of the sources I found couldn't really verify that he was a real person. He could have been based on a real person or several real people, but from what I found, he exists mostly in folklore. And he was so violent, there were even rumors that he drank blood. Familiar. What's even more familiar, though, is no matter how often the villagers killed Abertha, he would always come back to life, until they stabbed him in the heart with a yew wood piece, or a yew sword, and buried him upside down, preventing him from living again. This is kind of similar to like the silver aspect, having to be stabbed in the heart with silver, or with a silver bullet, and it kind of sounds like the Dracula myth. Fun fact, you can visit Abertha's grave. Let me read this. According to folkandflora.ie, a few miles west of Garva, County Derry, in the area of Glenullen and townland of Slaughterverty, stands a lone hawthorn in the field atop a hill. A large quarried stone lies at its base. So far, so normal, at least for us Irish. Our rural areas are dotted with fairy thorns, but there is no mere fairy site. This particular tree and its long flat stone is said to mark the grave of the chieftain Abertha. The last creature I'm going to talk about is something distinctly and specifically Irish. And I know, like I said, there are plenty of other creatures out there that were from Irish descent, things like werewolves, etc. But I just gotta stick to some because otherwise this video will take forever and it'll be after Halloween before it comes out. And I need to give you guys something on Halloween. Otherwise, what are you gonna do on a Tuesday night? Halloween's on a Tuesday this year. Dumb. Okay, so the banshee. Broken down in Irish, the Irish language, ban meaning woman and she meaning fairy, or the fairy folk. Quite literally, woman fairy, or fairy woman. Now, if you listen to pop culture on these things or modern retellings, the banshee is a woman who can scream so loud and so violently that it could kill you. It shakes the earth and you have to grab your ears in pain. But here's the real banshee. The banshee is a woman, very good, a woman or a spirit that foretells death. She doesn't cause death, but she foretells it and she'll warn you about it. And if you heard her crying in the woods or outside in the countryside of Ireland, it meant that somebody close to you in your family was going to die. And again, the banshee doesn't scream. She cries, she sobs, and she does something specifically called keening. And according to Irish tradition, keening was a specific kind of mournful song sobbing that you would do at a funeral. This was a mournful noise that mainly women did. Somebody who keened, or a keener, would go to the loved one's funeral and create a kind of sobbing song for them, pounding on the coffin, making a kind of rhythmic noise and song about the person's life, all while sobbing for their death. And there were actually paid keeners, people you could pay to go to the funeral who did this professionally. That's how important it was to the death ceremonies of Ireland, at least in certain parts of the country back in the day. And honestly, this sounds cathartic. To be screaming and crying, singing a song about the person's life, sounds way easier than just kind of quietly dabbing your tears away at a funeral. But a banshee was a keener that didn't cry over somebody, she foretold the death of somebody. There are a couple of takes on the banshee. Some say she's an old woman, skinny and wet, combing her long, stringy, black, wet hair, or she could be a young woman, a woman that takes the form of a loved one who might have died too early. Which leads me kind of to my next point about the banshees, is that it's said in some circles that every family has their own banshee. Again, this is more common in the countryside than it would be in the cities. And once again, a lot of you have come to me with previous experience on the banshee, having seen her or found her comb, an omen just as ominous. If you find the banshee's comb, don't touch it, just leave it alone. And again, I say to my countryside friends, blink twice if you need the Big Smoke's help. We can send reinforcements. I'm pretty sure I can involve the US military. I can't, that's a lie. And if you hear her cry or her keen, you should run the other way. Now, a lot of people say that this stems from the crying or the screaming of animals at night in the countryside, which, yes, absolutely, that could make sense. If you hear a coyote or like a fox screaming or crying in the middle of the night, I would assume the worst as well. But also, don't test this theory, because what if it is a banshee? Don't talk to her. And so that's the last of the creatures I'm going to talk about today, folks. Apologies for it being such a short video. I really want to get this up in time for Halloween, and I know that you guys have been patiently waiting for me to get my ass together, because editing is one of my least favorite things about making social media content. Everything else about it is super fun. The research, the writing, the filming, everything else. It's the editing that's kind of the... Oh, right. But this actually will close off Hannoween. We have been talking a lot about Halloween aspects of Samhain and ancient Irish creatures, like the ones we just talked about, on my Instagram and my TikTok, and again on YouTube when I can get it in under a minute. And so it's been absolutely amazing and just so incredibly fun to explore Halloween with you guys. And I gotta say, I think the best part about the Hannoween series has been the feedback and the comments, because a lot of you guys have been so excited to hear about Halloween in your home country that you want to tell your own stories, and that's been amazing because this is a learning channel. There have been times when I've been mistaken, or I didn't know something, or there's extra things to look at, and having people comment that underneath has just been, you know, part of my own learning. So yes, while this is an educational channel, I'm also being educated. So if that sounds good to you, learning with me about this beautiful country, then click like, click subscribe, and follow along on this beautiful journey. I go to certain places, I make little crafts, I sell them on my Etsy, and we can all learn together. Like I said, click like and subscribe, or I will send my own personal banshee to your house. And if I can't find my own personal banshee, then I will scream outside of your door to freak you out. Have a great Halloween, go trick-or-treating, have some fun, festive snacks and drinks. I'll be here probably with this little guy. He's not afraid of fireworks. So like on a Halloween in Ireland, there's a lot of fireworks. He's not afraid of fireworks. He takes them as like a personal attack and decides to bark at them as much as possible. It's like a challenge for him. So take care of your doggies, and I will see you next time here when we talk about some other fun stuff that I have planned for November. Fun surprise. Fun surprise, I'm going somewhere in November that could be interesting. Alrighty, have a great day, everybody. And thank you again, and happy Halloween. Final time I get to say it.